Hi, my name is Dana Roseman. I'm the Director of Technology and Applied Research at Integrated Diabetes Services. And today I wanted to talk about the DIY Loop system, specifically about how to use the system for bolusing and delivering insulin with high-fat meals. But before I do that, I just wanted to remind you that this video is intended for educational purposes only. Any changes to your management of your diabetes ought to be talked with your prescribing provider. As someone who lives with type 1 myself and has been using the Loop system for about 5 years now, one of my very favorite options of the system is to use high-fat overrides or save without bolusing for high-fat meals. And when I talk about high-fat meals, we're talking about fat that is 20 grams, 30 grams, 40 grams. And if you take all of your insulin up front when you have a meal like that, you might have noticed that your blood sugar will drop low before it inevitably starts trending higher hours later. And this is because the fat delays absorption of those carbohydrates that you're eating at that time. And it also causes your insulin not to work as well. You actually have a state of insulin resistance for some hours after a high fat meal like that. A rule of thumb that I like to suggest people start to notice about is if you have 10 grams of fat at a meal, maybe think that your delay will be about an hour. If you have 20 grams of fat, maybe 2 hours, 30 grams of fat, 3 hours, and so on. So if you have a high-fat meal, one of my very favorite things is quesadillas, lots of cheese and lots of fats and oils, maybe some guacamole with it as well. I'm going to have a good amount of fat and see my blood sugars staying high and trending high hours after I'm finished eating. So how do we use Loop to better manage that? Well, one of my very favorite options of Loop is to save without bolusing when you're taking insulin at meal times. Some of the carbohydrates are going to be absorbed up front, but we certainly don't want to take the whole bolus for the whole meal, or we do risk having low blood sugars. And so if you put some carbohydrates in a bolus and save them, but without bolusing for a long absorption time, you give the algorithm a little bit more leeway as to delivering insulin when you actually need it as your blood sugars start to rise. Another option with a high-fat meal is to take, again, some of the bolus up front and then schedule the second part of the bolus to happen in the future. And so it's similar to save without bolusing, but you actually need to go ahead and schedule that in the bolus calculator with the blue calendar that's there in the Loop system, if you haven't noticed it. A third option that I like to suggest to people is to see what works best. It's nice to have options, is to use a custom override, so a custom high-fat override that you can set to start in 2 hours after you're done eating, so that as your blood sugars start to rise from the slower metabolism of a high-fat meal, there will be almost like a temporary basal that you might have used in an old traditional system, but you would have an increased delivery of your basal insulin maybe 2-3 hours after you're done eating. Try some of those. Let me know what you think. And then if you need some additional information, please go on to our website at integrateddiabetes.com. There's a lot of great resources there, including a type 1 university. And certainly all of our providers are available for individualized consultations. Thanks so much.